Hi there, welcome to Hey Sound Guy, the podcast where I'll be peeking behind the curtains of the wonderful world of music. Each week I'll be speaking to engineers, musicians, and industry professionals. I'll be having a little chat with them, share some fun stories from the road. Now my next guest is a good friend of mine. I've known him quite a long time. We toured together with James McCartney back in the day. He's a fantastic bass player. He's also played with Pete Molinari, among others. He's currently running his own studio, and he's a great producer and mix engineer. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for my good friend, Oliver McKiernan.
Well, it's great to be here.
Thank you very much for taking the time and coming all the way to West London to see me to do this.
Yeah, it's nice. But for the listeners who don't know, we're actually sat around the pool at Tience's 9-bedroom mansion. So if you're ever in the area, you can swing by and maybe take a dip.
Yeah, the table's floating on we're sitting waist deep
Hawaiian shorts.
Water.
Yeah. The lilos are to one side.
It's like the opposite of the Ice Hotel, where you're just in the water having a drink.
This is why they all come and do your podcast.
That's probably what it is. I don't tell them that before. It's like a surprise reveal.
Yeah. I was surprised.
Yeah, I'm fiddling with the optics so you can't see it. It looks like just a regular bedroom.
Yeah.
But it's actually quite nice. Well, that all said, could you introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you do, how you got into this lovely world of music?
Yeah, I'm Oliver McKiernan, and I spent most of my last 20 years primarily playing bass in one form or another for all kinds of different people and situations. And then more recently, the last 5 to 7 years, I've built up a studio and have been, I guess with hindsight, like transitioning to a more studio-based job. And the bass playing has been anything from pub gigs. I kind of started to learn to play when I lived in Leicester, which is where I went to high school. Loads of pub gigs, really fun. Every Thursday, Friday, Saturday would be out. And
was this when you were still in high school?
No, I didn't start playing till I was 16, so I just left. I was probably doing A-levels.
Right. Okay.
And then my first kind of music course, like a kind of A-level equivalent thing. And then still to this day think it was probably the time in my life where I was the most cash rich.
Yeah.
It was just kind of had this kind of part-time day job. Would that play three nights a week, would wake up with a hangover on Sunday morning with a pocket full of money.
Yeah, exactly.
And then,
that's what you didn't spend.
Which I couldn't spend, didn't spend. And then, and just did that for years, moved to London, thought I would just do the same thing here, overnight. Yeah. Was incredibly wrong about that.
Yeah, right. Everybody thinks, London, it's...
How hard can it be? Oh, it's hard.
Yeah.
No, just no joke.
I always think, that song New York, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. I think that's very much also true about London. It's a really hard place to get into, and I think people are maybe disillusioned by London and the success, and everybody, they think everybody who's here has made it. Yeah. And that the truth is that it's not really like that. A lot of people here are fucking struggling. Yeah. So this thing that I think HSBC was advertising, like 1 in 53 people in London are homeless.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, yeah. I heard a statistic as 1 in 200 a little while ago. But I mean, if HSBC are advertising it, then it can't be false information, can it?
No, I can believe it. I mean, it's tough. And it's not just because it's full of competitive people who want to kind of get to the top of what they're doing. It's because it also attracts all kinds of nutters who believe, the wrong thing about themselves.
It's almost like an LA, New York, bastard baby, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, what a great place. But you do get that feeling, like once you kind of, you get your, you work hard, you create your own luck as much as you can, and you just sort of wait for the spark. I was listening to your conversation with your friend Tim, and you were talking about that aspect of the job. You know, you get your in somehow, some person you've met, some association or some bit of serendipity, and then suddenly everyth's okay or ish. It's better than it was.
But more often than not, it doesn't happen for people.
Yeah,
I definitely feel like, you know, if you take enough time and stick it out, then it works out, then it's great. But if it don't, then, you know, it really sucks.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just a waiting game. There's a drummer friend of mine talks about that, and he just says it's like a game of endurance. You know, you just got to hold on longer than the other guys and wait for them kind of to give up.
Yeah,
and then you go, great, it's just me left, but I get the gig, you know.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy way to live, folks, but you do get that feeling once that you get your stroke of luck that, okay, well, I can do this, you know, it's a tough job in a tough city. Okay, that makes me feel quite positive now, you know.
You can almost give yourself a little tap on the back.
Like, but don't get complacent, because that's when all the work will dry up.
100%. Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, like, I always say this. I treat every day like an interview for my own job, you know.
Yeah,
I'm trialing, because as a freelancer, you know, yes, you can have a good track record, but you mess up enough times, and, you know.
Yeah, it takes a lifetime to build up a reputation and a day to.
That's right. It's just that one video that surfaced, right?
it was the one. I didn't even know that camera was on, actually. But
no, yeah.
He sat in a room full of 5 cameras.
No, those are just for show. Don't worry, I won't put this on the internet. Brilliant. Yeah. Right. So you were playing the pub gigs in Leicester. 15, 16, or 16, 17, 18 sort of getting, and then you moved to London. Did you play in any originals bands, or did you play in, how did you get your in here with the bass playing?
That was always the plan, you know, like I always just started playing to be in a band, like probably like most people. You know, I don't know many people.
Don't really want to just start off with a solo career.
Yeah, I mean, I know sort of a handful of musicians who I think, you know, they don't have that same kind of, I don't know, like cultural Saturday afternoon record store connection that most people I know do. But they just, you know, like wanted to be the guitar guy or the drum guy, and they just had this ideal about being a session hitman, and off they went, you know. And they figured out almost like a mathematical equation, and just, you know, it makes them no better or worse than musicians, just a different approach. But the plan was always to be in bands, you know. I wanted to make music and be in a, you know, I was into metal. I'm a child of rock, so Sepultura, Machine Head, Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, you know, and then Rage Against the Machine came along, and that really, you know, connected with hip hop, and, you know, and then from there it blew open, you know, all the genres became fair game. But yeah, wanted to be in original bands, and then always got sidetracked because of the covers, and you could get paid easily for covers, you know. So some of the bands were like half original bands. Maybe there was a songwriter in the band, and we might chuck in a few originals. Yeah. And then came to London, and I remember going to a pub on like the first night. I lived in Clapham, and I thought we'd go out and we would go to this bar where they had live music. Scout the area. Yeah, go to this bar. They had live music. It was the Swan in Stockwell, which has just happened to be the closest place, which I now know is dodgy place. Dodgy, yeah.
A mate of mine used to bounce her there.
Right, it's heavy duty, but you know, to us it was just the nearest place to go and get a pint. And they had live music. It was covers bands. I thought, let's go and see how good these guys really are. You know, you know, coming from the city, playing 3 nights a week, having more work than I could shake a big stick at. And I watched the first band, and I went, oh shit.
Right.
They're incredible.
These guys know what they're doing.
My God, yeah. And, you know, I just kind of watched them all. It was effortless. And then another band came on, and they were better. And then we went upstairs and watched another band, and they were better.
Right.
And I walked home, you know, that night, a 10-minute walk, with just going, wow, there's a hell of a journey ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to have to sit down and play this thing.
Yeah. But yeah, you know.
So did you get into it fully then? Did you like up your practice regime or something?
No, I've always been atrocious at practicing. Okay. I can't stand it. I don't like it. I find it boring. Like the bass, to play bass on your own is inherently a very, very boring thing to do.
Okay.
It's not an instrument designed to be played in a room on your own. You know, when you get a drummer or a guitarist around, it's you know, I obviously love it. But
it changes the game.
Yeah, but I had enrolled in a course to do a guitar tech, but the bass arm of that. You know, so you know, got some good information, and it was good. I've dropped out of it, but I got loads of great information. And you talked with somebody in one of your other episodes, I think maybe. Who's the guy who played in Ceramic, the drummer?
James Yates.
James Yates, okay.
Yeah.
And you asked him, like, you know, what do you think is the value of a music degree? Is it a, you know, a really truly valuable commodity? And you know, I don't think it necessarily is.
No.
But,
I think the experience that you get from the learning, from the being there, and the people that you meet are almost worth more than the piece of paper that you get at the end of it, whether you get it or not. You know what I mean?
Agree, yeah.
But I mean, it. You know, for me, from my point of view as a sound engineer, you know, these things can be taught. You know, that's not. You know, you can have on-the-job training, no problem. I mean, I've had several students which have just come and done loads of work experience with me, and you know, they've gone on to do other things. And with music, you know, you can be self-taught, or you can go to a school and get this intensive thing. But it's, you know, it's what you get out of it.
Yeah.
I don't think that, because also, you know, assessments and things get graded as much as it tries to be objective. They never, you know, there's always going to be their opinion and what they think, and that could, you know, it could result in, you know, different results to the work that you put in, or how good you think your work was, and that can be demoralizing in some way. So you know, it's good for some, and it's not good for others.
I think that, I don't know what the exact quote is, but basically it's a Frank Zappa quote that is something like, writing about music is basically like swimming about architecture. It's disconnected, unrelated, and it's a silly thing to try and do. But you know, there was the pros of that, like on day one of that course, just on day one, I played with 30 drummers.
Perfect.
On day one, like you know, like you can't buy that. Like that was really useful. And the thing that I overlooked for years and years and years, is the value of the network of those people. And I just sort of went and was a bit of kind of, you know, my own, didn't really hang out that much. I had like one buddy, and we used to go and, you know, turn up to the lectures and then go to the pub and not really practice. You know, we weren't great students. But I wish I'd paid more attention to kind of, you know, staying in touch with those people, understanding that actually in 5 or 10 years' time, this is the network of people that it would be helpful to be connected to for the benefit of your career. Simple, you know, didn't spot it. I had to go and kind of beg them to be my friend. 10 years later, remember me? No, okay, never mind.
I baked a nice banana bread.
Kind of, basically, yeah. But, you know, so certain, like you say, there's value in, you know, there's some intrinsic value in going to those things, and it is basically what you make of it, but there's no better or worse than just getting out there and doing it.
It's about there's one that I did last week with a friend of mine. She's a singer, Christy Korowski, and she wrote an article about perseverance and these sorts of things, and it's really just, you know, like we said before, it's even if you just stick it out long enough, just be the last man standing. You know, it's about, you know, going at it, and you know, if this is your goal, then work towards it. You might get blown off course, you might get, you know, different things, but you know, have the thing in sight, you know, the goal in sight, and the perseverance to stick it out. I mean, also you gotta appreciate what you have in the time and the things that you're going through, and live it, because this is life. You know, you're not living in the future, you're not living for that goal, you're living where you are now. And kind of, I think it's a thing that maybe comes with age, as we both know, is the ability to accept, to be more accepting of how life is and what it throws at you, and just kind of gritting your teeth and getting through it.
Yeah.
And taking everything from it that you can.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, come across a lot of angry people. I was an angry person for a long time, and then you kind of I don't know. There's a point something happens. I don't know whether it's all people in all careers or walks of life, but something happens. I don't know. For me, it sort of coincided with having kids, and then just this calmness comes over you. It did with me. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't sound like real. Like people associate having kids with sort of chaos and.
Well, it is that as well, but it is in a good way. There's a labour of love in there.
It is, but it is. But there's something happens anyway, and then you become calm, and then with that comes the sort of acceptance and more tolerance, and all of those things help. And I was very worried. I think I'd seen a lot of people. It's one of those industries where they talk about your age. Your age is a thing. Possibly less so doing sound engineering. Maybe that would be perceived more as experience. But if you're a musician, if you're looking for gigs, or you're on the stage, it can go. It becomes a thing. Not for everyone, but I remember being told when I was 25, I was too old for a gig.
Really?
And it would happened to be true, because the people they were building this band around were younger, and it wouldn't have looked right. But from then I was like, oh my god, right, okay, and it's the thing. But so one thing I was worried about was like, oh, you have kids, that kind of pushes you more into that kind of, he's out of commission.
Old zone.
Yeah, old zone. Yeah. Like he's got kids now, he won't be interested. People making decisions for you based on the information.
Yeah, without even speaking to you.
Yes, yeah. Don't know, maybe you've experienced that, but rather kind of reassuringly, the opposite has happened. Is that dads give dads gigs, and the older you get, the more dads there are.
That's true.
And mums, I should say as well. But so that's been nice, like different people. I get work from different people now, but certainly a number of them are like, yeah, he's a dad. He could use like some time away, just if it's a gig of mine,
and he can definitely do all the work, because there's bills to be paid.
Yes, yeah.
And you've got a new one, so there's nappies to be bought and all these sorts of things.
There's a lot of nappies. Yeah.
I remember those days.
I was thinking, but there's the Tony Levin story. Bass player Tony Levin, and he played bass on Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer, and he took his kid to the studio, like he had a new kid. And the bass line on that track is infamous, and it's a very particular sound. But he took a nappy and stuck it under his bass strings to get the sound.
What?
So every time I change a nappy, I'm like, this is cool.
Yeah, brilliant.
Good enough for Tony Levin.
Wow,
I'm in.
That's fantastic. Is that what did he use that to mute the strings?
Yeah,
as what they do with the scrunchy nowadays.
Yeah, I'm sure the same thing. Some basses have little felt pads that you can raise up to make it more double bassy.
Give it a softer sound.
Exactly. Take that sustain out and just make it more thuddy.
Cool, man.
Yeah. So,
that's interesting.
So I think it's okay, really. But yeah, it's good. Have you experienced any of that? Like behaviour from other people, sort of, making those decisions for you. Go, he's not on the scene at the moment because he's being a dad.
No, fortunately not. I mean, I've been quite consistently busy, and I mean, my two sort of main places where I work, Ronnie Scott's and Boysdale, we've got the same manager, boss guy, and I've known him, for a long time. Miles Ashton. Right?
I know his name came up, but I don't know him. Yeah.
Right. He is, he's sort of head of sound at both these places. And with National Youth Jazz Orchestra and all these, he's Bill Ashton's son. Okay. So I've known him a long time, and he knows the situation. I just when the rights comes out, I'm like, I need these days, and these days I need free, and that's a good thing about being freelance, and I can still get the work in. So yeah, I've been fortunate not to have that, and I think it's definitely probably more a musician thing, whereas sound engineering is kind of it's mostly freelance. But even if you've got a regular job, then you can be the daddy, whatever, and you won't see any effect to your workload.
Yeah.
So no, I think I've been fortunate not to. But I mean, it might happen. I don't know.
Yeah,
just luckily not in our circle, because we're quite a close group, which is great.
Yeah, I'd certainly be more reassured to see, but an older guy behind the desk, than the 22-year-old hotshot. I would get worried, because maybe not for their technical skills necessarily, but so much of anyone in the music industry's job is about just
service.
Yeah, service, getting on, being professional, just
100%.
making the wheels turn freely and easily, and
doing the best job you can do, regardless of whether you're not like the person on stage or off the stage.
Yeah,
or the sound
exactly. And that might mean absorbing all kinds of, weird behaviours from artists.
Abuse.
Yeah.
Getting shouted at.
Exactly, with all kinds of politics, around money often, in bands, and, schedules or whatever it is, you just have to, you realise, as soon as you realise that's your job, that's part of your job, it's fine.
Yeah.
And you just go, that's one thing that's going to make me better than that guy. The more of this I absorb, the more likely I am to get the job.
Yeah. And to, again, just to persevere and get through that. And I think also, sometimes realize that it's not necessarily personal. It can be just somebody's had a shitty day and they've had a long travel and this and that happened, these and those. And I mean, I remember the first time I met Ginger Baker.
Oh,
right?
wow, yeah, okay.
He was coming to play at Ronnie's, and I was doing the sound, and he came in and he wasn't very happy.
Notoriously unhappy guy.
Yeah. I mean, but on this particular day, it was just that they played the night before in another country. I can't remember where it was, and they had an early lobby call. And flight came in. They came straight to Ronnie's, and the whole time he just said to his manager, "I just want to go and have a shower," and just we're like, "Okay, it's fine, but just quickly do the sound check, and then there's a 2-hour break, and then you can go to the hotel." Yeah, but I just want to go and have a shower. And I remember him not being very happy, but it's.
I mean, a 2 a.m. lobby call, and
it's not fun.
It's going to make anyone cranky.
Yeah.
I remember doing that run in Ireland with James McCartney, and it was like a week, and it was heavy.
Yeah.
It was heavy. I never experienced anything like it before or since, I have to say, but I don't know what they packed it in, and it was insane, the scheduling. I think it didn't happen again because
no,
people said that we can't do that for longer.
It's not happening anymore.
But it was late nights, loads of travelling, early lobby calls.
I remember we went to the hotel once for about 3 hours.
And then they had this, what was the app called?
Master Tour.
Master Tour, yeah.
Yeah, and Dad loved it.
Dan, what? Tell me. Look on Master Tour. Dan, what's the? Look on Master Tour. Do you know where? Look on Master Tour. And sometimes, like the schedule would get revised, when you were asleep. So you go, you check your thing. Okay, so lobby call's like 6:30 a.m.
Yeah, and then it's 5 a.m.
Yeah, and then they go, well, where have you been? I'm like, oh, come on,
I was sleeping. That's where
I was sleeping when you changed that. Yeah, for God's sake. But a great example of some of the stuff you should just kind of suck up and just go, okay, fine, let's just get on with this.
Sorry. No, I think it's very important. And I think when we went to the States, we demonstrated that to a very high degree. All of us. There was 9 of us on tour for 6 weeks together.
That was heavy. Yeah.
And there weren't any fighting. Everybody was just really professional, and we all just got on it and did what we had to do. And
I think it's all that stuff is interesting. I think to the outsider, a band is usually a group of high school mates. Often, not all bands are like Rush. They obviously grow up together. This is more like when you go to an office to work. That's you're in a room with people who have, would put one person's put those 9 people together. You might know one of them or 2 of them maybe, which was the case in our group. But essentially, you've got to learn these people and figure out like what the best way to be is around them,
Exactly.
But being the professional version of yourself, which for me isn't like the same as like the private version of myself. You know,
sometimes you got to check yourself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you know, so to maintain that is it's like flexing a muscle. You know, and you know most of us can do it for 8 hours a day. You go there and you act professionally, but I come home and I don't act professionally at home.
No, you don't.
That's not what home is for.
No.
You know, like you know, is it? Maybe my missus might like disagree. Maybe she's maybe I'm not professional enough at home. I don't know. Maybe I should check that one. But that's an effort, you know, like, and you that's an effort you have to maintain virtually 24 hours. You know, if we were room sharing too, you know. So you go to sleep and there's like your buddy or your workmate there, and you wake up and they're there, and you get on the bus and then all 9 of you are there, and you go to sound check, you're all there, and gigs, you're all there, you know.
Eat dinner together and everything.
Yeah.
You get maybe an hour a day to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really valuable to do that. You know, my getaway was running. I just find an hour just to go
to the gym.
Yeah, and some people kind of, you know, I remember James was like keen to kind of join in on that, and he occasionally would like, hey, we should go running together. And I was like, I don't want to be rude, but like this
is my me time.
Yeah, and James is a great meditator, and I was like, that's my meditation. You know, that's how I go and reset.
Perfect.
And I think people, you know, everyone has their thing. I wasn't drinking at the time, and I think perhaps I should have been.
It definitely made it a lot of fun.
Yeah, you know, I've never been on like as long a tour as that, but but I think if I did,
I did end up spending more money than I made though.
Yeah. Oh well.
It was. I mean, I just look at it. I didn't really look at it as a money-making tour. It was really just an outing with a band, and it was, you know, my first real sort of long tour.
Yeah. Have you done anything like as long as that ever?
No, not since. No. I kind of, when Savannah was born, gave up the touring thing because I want to be here.
Yeah,
and as I said before, I used to have her in the mornings and then go to work and then come back and then have her, and then with the touring it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
I did since with Ceramic a bit of touring, but that was mostly weekends and stuff like that.
Was Tobias playing in Ceramic? Like,
no.
I think he did a bit, like in the beginning. He did it with Marcus Foster.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he did a bit with them in the beginning.
Oh right. That must have been before James joined then.
Must have been. Yeah, I know it was. I think it was brief. He did an EP with them or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought maybe that was the connection, but.
Oh right. No, the connection. How I got there is Greg Hoffman, the bass player.
I know Greg. Yeah.
Yeah. He.
Fellow countryman.
We know each other through Hugh Neal. You know Hugh Neal.
I know Hugh.
I was supposed to do the podcast with him yesterday, right. But since I hurt my back, I can't ride my bike and take all the gear to the studio. So yeah, we're gonna reschedule and do another one. Anyway, so I know Greg, and the reason Vaz, you know Vaz, I think Anyway, he's a promoter at Ronnie's. He does a night called TV Nights on Tuesdays.
Okay.
And he came to me and he's like, "Oh, I've got this band that I'm, managing. Do you want to do the sound for them?" And yeah, so I got on board there.
Right.
But yeah, I've known Greg before and then there.
Greg's great. I spent, going back to the kind of the journey of like, pubs and coming to London and all that. A common thread through a lot of that for me was working in guitar shops. I did my work experience when I was 15, worked in guitar shops in Leicester, and carried on that accidentally, really. In London, I saw an advert, applied for it, started doing it again, and it sort of got me down a bit. But Greg used to come in as a metal kid, with his like Metallica and his Slayer t-shirts on, and I sold him some stuff, and it was all like pointy metal gear, and then he came back maybe like 6 months later and bought like a slightly less pointy guitar.
Okay, and then sort of started rounding off.
Yeah, and then I was like, dude, just buy a P-bass, for God's sake. And he's like, oh, I don't know, and but everyone I used to work on Denmark Street, and he became kind of this figure, people knew, because he's really personable.
Yeah,
and
he's a great guy, man.
Really great, and what a bass player now. Like, I walked into the Blues Kitchen in Camden one night with a friend of mine, just for drinks, and there was a band, it's like an Otis Redding tribute band on, and they were good, and I couldn't really see the stage. I'm 5'6", I don't often get to see the stage if you're in the audience.
Yeah.
And I was with my buddy, and I was like, God, they're a good band, but you tell you what, that bass player is the best musician on the stage by miles. No discredit to the rest of the band, but that he's obviously really good. And then walk up through the crowd comes Greg, and I was like, oh, bloody hell, it's Greg. Was that you? Yeah. Okay. What sounded great? And he'd say his bass on his back. He's like, got to get a bus back to the arse end of nowhere because I've got another gig. Blah blah blah. So that was really nice to see that. When the good guys get good work. That's really reassuring. And he's put me in touch with a few musicians for the studio. Actually,
great, man.
Some singers. It really worked out. But yeah. But going back to touring, like to the touring thing. Is that it scares a lot of people?
Yeah.
There's an idealized version of it, and it's basically the Motley Crue image of that.
Absolutely. And I was just going to go to that.
Right, and it's the common what's the word?
Misconception.
Common misconception, but it's the popular image of that.
Everybody thinks touring is just crazy and hookers and blow
and throwing TVs out of windows.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the first thing your nan says. When I'm going on tour. Oh, you're going to throw a TV out a window? Oh God, no.
Nan.
I would get sacked.
Exactly. And have to pay for the TV.
And have to pay for the TV.
Everything.
We couldn't even kind of raid the minibar apart from the management the next day. We go, did somebody have a whiskey out the minibar? Maybe.
That stuff registers straight away.
Yeah. But, I joined Echo Belly, maybe 5 years ago. And, not probably 4 or 5 years after we stopped touring with James. And he went kind of acoustic, I guess. He went off on his own. And we rehearsed quite a lot. They hadn't done any gigs for ages, for like 15 years.
Right.
Made no records. I think Glenn hadn't really picked up a guitar that much. That was my understanding anyway. But they certainly hadn't played as a rock band for ages. So there was a kind of an element of getting those wheels turning again, and
get some Q40 or Q20, what do you call it?
WD-40, yeah.
On the cogs there.
That's it. You get them squeaking and get the wheels turning. And we rehearsed a lot, before we had a show in the diary, and that was all they offered initially. They were like, we're just going to do one show,
see how it goes,
and they got the taste for it. And we made one full album.
Oh, nice.
And then they did a sort of compilation album of bits and bobs, which I mixed some of, and then they've sort of gone acoustic again, which is makes me feel like maybe I'm the bass player that turns bands acoustic. Because it happened with James, it happened with Echo Belly,
Brilliant.
Maybe like if you're in a rock band and you feel like you've had enough of the loud noise, get me in. And I swear, within 3 years, you will want to be like an acoustic. You'll go like all Dylan. But you could tell any time that this notion of touring came up, it was like this elephant in the room with them. They were, and I was like, they would get a bit edgy or like.
Have they got bad history with the touring?
Yeah, they got worked really hard. I think they had their major label deal back in the day, probably in the mid-90s, and they obviously just had a lot of money pumped in, so the record companies needs to get a lot of money back out, and therefore they worked them hard to make that happen, And
every festival, every gig,
every last one, and they've got some great stories. They did loads of great stuff,
That was like with Ceramic as well,
right?
I mean,
they just got worked.
Yeah.
And how do they feel about all that with hindsight?
Well, I mean, everybody kind of just went and did what they had to do and got into it, and yeah, I mean, it was the work that had to be done and the long drives that we did, but we had some fun times and some weird experiences.
Yeah.
Like you said, you listened to the one with James where the people were just having sex right there on the pier.
Wow, I might have missed that bit.
We were in Holland in Nijmegen, I think the town was called, for the Valkhof Festival, and after a whole night where we got charged, that there was a riot, and then we were caught in the riot trying to get out of it, and the police on horseback was riding into the crowd to disperse the crowd and everything.
Wow.
So we went and we got some joints, and we were sitting on the deck and smoking a joint, and then there's this concrete walkway on the other side of the pier, with a wall that's probably about waist height, and under one of these lamps, this couple just starts making out, and we're like, okay. There's about 7 or 8 of us on deck, smoking this, because we were staying in a boat hotel.
Okay.
And and then they just went at it, and it became a full-on show. And there was cheering and everything, but it lasted a good while. And at the end, when it was all done, there was applause and cheering, and it's just weird. I mean, why they?
The stuff you see, it's otherworldly. You know, I think like the way that people. The way that you could start dressing, you might mould slightly to the group, I often feel like I don't have any real of my own actual personal style. I just go through these relationships with artists and bands and tours that maybe last 3 to 5 years. Let's say there's been 4 or 5 of them. And sometimes the artist dresses really flamboyantly, and there's a guy called Pete Molinari who I played for a number of years, and he dresses really flamboyantly. He's a great, really kind of showy, excellent stylist.
The artist.
Yeah, and he likes the band to also do a bit of that.
Right.
And so the periods of time when
I remember even with James, there was sort of like a kind of a dress code kind of thing going on.
Exactly.
James would always, Jay would always have the waistcoat on, and everybody would have a certain sort of way.
A thing, yeah.
Almost a Beatles thing going on.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It wasn't, there's a fine line between sparkly waistcoats and dicky bows and, actually, doing something which just presents the band well. But, yeah, but you can go on tour. If you're kind of you get up in the morning, you dress like that, and you go to bed, and you go on stage. And these little pockets of these little venues and the little lobbies of hotels, it's okay. You can be quite flamboyant.
Yeah, because you're in this isolated world.
Completely isolated. And then you realise that you've adopted more and more of this kind of slightly unusual behaviour. And then you go
back to the real world.
You get home, and you're wearing these big hats with feathers in, and handkerchiefs in your pocket,
Oh, brilliant.
I'm only going to get a pint of milk from the corner shop,
Yeah, brilliant. I'm going to try this banana
bread. Yeah, dig in.
Oliver made some banana bread.
Yeah, we did it. Yeah. So, yeah, it is possible, Or you see people coming out of festivals as well, They've lived 3 days of madness, and at the first kind of gas station outside of where the festival is, everyone's still quite fits in. There's enough, people like
but
you.
Once they start dispersing, then everybody...
Yeah, like the second gas station, the third... By the time you get to the third gas station, if you're going a good few hundred miles, and you're the only one in that forecourt in purple wellies.
And everybody's like, what's wrong with this guy? Don't you guys... Oh, you weren't there.
Yeah. But yeah, But you did of course, you went through the kind of a formal educational route.
I did. Yeah, no, I did. I always really wanted to study sound engineering, because I'm not giving anything, any kind of having the degree was always a goal for me. I don't know. Maybe looking back on it now, maybe I had this sort of archaic view of, go to school, go to college, get a degree, blah blah blah. But since I started in sound engineering, I was 16. A friend of mine showed me the ropes, and I was really into it. And then I think maybe when he died, it was a sort of something that I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and so I came here. The original plan was to come here and make money and then go and study at home, but then I ended up staying here, so I did the degree here, and I learned a lot. I was I think I always thought full-time education was 5 days a week, and that's what it was, but I had 1 full day and 2 half days.
Right, okay.
So I was like...
With the expectation that you would do maybe 12 hours on your own or something?
I guess, yeah. It was... I don't know. I got out of it what I wanted to get out of it. Oh, yeah. I'm doing it. I'm living it. I'm working.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did go that way, but I think more than what the degree or the piece of paper is worth is what... Joe Clancy was one of my tutors, and one of our modules, choice modules, was work experience, and I got outvoted on that one. So I went to him and I said, listen, if you've got anything, just let me know. And I got a gig with the National Youth Jazz Orchestra that way.
Right.
That was the way in. So the willingness to do it, and just again, be almost not. In this case, I wasn't the last man standing, but I was the only one that was willing to do work experience.
Yeah.
And that kind of got me in there. So, I don't think I've ever really had to show anybody my degree. It's more now, like, they'll look at your CV and like, oh, this is where you work. Yeah, it's fine. This guy knows what he's doing.
I find myself, like I'd say I dropped out of music school. That's a sort of half truth, is that I did a 2-year kind of A-level equivalent course. Basically, I failed my A-levels because
right.
I was in pubs playing rock and roll, the weekends, and just realised actually that's what I wanted to do. So my normal kind of academic A-levels, I failed them miserably. I got 2 U's and an N like this.
I don't know what those are.
The 2 U's. They will they go into the statistics of like who got what nationally, but the N is so terrible it doesn't even get counted in those. Right?
We'll have like between 0 and 10%.
Like it never happened. Like this guy, you mentioned my name like we don't know this guy.
Under the rug.
Exactly. Yeah. We just pretend.
Brilliant.
And so did a A-level equivalent course. Real eye-opener. It was Access to Music in Leicester, which was brilliant. And then came to London, did a foundation degree, which I did complete, and got that. Really probably should have stopped there, I think.
Okay.
I went on to start the degree, did a year of the degree, and then dropped out.
Oh, okay.
Because I sort of realised that the foundation degree was quite intensive.
It's enough.
It's enough. In terms of people, like I taught for a while after that as well. I've kind of always taught. I don't teach anymore, but for years I taught. And people would always go, oh, you must have accumulated a lot of information on music theory over those 4 or 5 years of education. And do you know what? You can write all of the useful stuff on the side of one piece of A4 paper. That all the really useful stuff that you use every day is one piece of A4. I'm not joking, And so but then so dropped out of the degree, and found that afterwards, I would sometimes just say that I had a degree. I'd figure, you know what?
Well, you've got the foundation degree, so you're not lying.
It's not strictly untrue, but then I'd sort of discovered that it wasn't always beneficial, and so actually sometimes it was detrimental to mention that you'd been in any kind of formal education, depending on the scenario. So with Pete, I started to play for him. He was kind of into the idea of like having session musicians. His ideals are all around like the Nashville guys, like the Wrecking Crew, Motown. He's into the idea of musicians who have a level of sort of understanding, have been taught formally, like that.
They can come in and like, can you change this down, two tones and
exactly, yeah. So his experience of all the artists that he liked, the sort of Roy Orbison's, Willie Nelson's, Dylan, whatever, all the musicians that would work with those guys would be good musicians from a some kind of formal education.
Yeah.
But I noticed that didn't always go down well. If you bring it up, I was quite proud of having been to this college, and to have gone to the Guitar Institute. And because it's a kind of little world in its own, and there's quite a lot of backslapping goes on there, especially when you're around other people who have been there, and it's quite nice because you always know somebody who knows somebody. But on more than 2 or 3 occasions, you get into the rehearsal room on like a first rehearsal with a new band or a new artist, and I've taken the executive decision to kind of neglect to mention. I'm not gonna, in this situation.
If they don't ask you, don't tell them.
Don't tell them, yeah. And then have been sort of vindicated later when it comes up, and they're talking about, oh, these bloody schools that are churning out musicians. There's no soul in that. People should figure it out for themselves. And they're from maybe an era you talked about these degrees not being very old. Like when you did yours, I think you said the syllabus was 10 years old. So we're still living. It's dissipating slowly, but we're still living in an era where can be viewed with a bit of suspicion.
I think in more so probably here, because if you look at places like Italy, or the Norse countries, those guys it's part of their thing,
right.
To go to the Institute for Music is, it's a thing, and people do it, and people respect that, and that's come all the way through since the beginning of notation music.
Yeah. I think on the whole it is here, but there's definitely
it's kind of like a punk vibe.
Yeah, right. So like the place that I sort of found myself sort of like in terms of the jobs that I seem to get connected to, like all the time there are conversations going on that you're not a party to, and your name will come up, and you may or may not get put forward for something. And the amount of times that your name comes up and they'll go, actually, he's not really that kind of pop guy, or he's not a jazz guy, or he's not a rock guy. And then your name will disappear from the conversation. Somebody else's name will come out. You don't know how often those conversations happen, but you would imagine it's a lot. So I've found that pretty much the gigs that I've done have all had a common thread. They tend to be kind of rocky, indie, arty, rocky sort of vibe.
So that's where your name gets.
Yeah, only because I guess that's probably the first. James was probably the first really good gig, or Pete as well. Actually, I was playing for before, but they've all got this kind of common thing. They would loosely, stylistically have overlap. Like they're not jazz gigs, they're not pop gigs either. No.
It's like a hard rock pop kind of.
Yeah, with and there's some kind of arty angle to them. Like they wouldn't be afraid to make like an art piece for an album. That's definitely not going to be a single, and it's just supposed to be sort of challenging in some respect. Or, but my point, if I can remember it, is that to play those musics, you don't have to be technically capable. You don't have to be technically very capable. And I'm like, in the world of bass players, I am not a technical bass player. I'm just not. Like, there are so many amazing technicians out there. It's scary. Like I would not fare well in that competition. So I think, like, going back to your point, like, is it a punk vibe? Is this why, maybe in my experience, some of the organisations that I've got involved with I'd struggle with the notion that I might have struggled with the notion that I would have been formally trained. Like I get that, because they're from a DIY background. That's how they understand it. They're art students with guitars rather than musicians creating art. I get that. I understand that. I think it's just. I think that attitude is a little bit detrimental to the cause, because they're spending time on something that's not really important. Yeah.
I mean, that regardless of whether or not you're formally trained, what you should be concentrating on is the chemistry and the vibe. Because you can play with the most technical, person in the world, but if there's no chemistry and there's no vibe, then it's not gonna fucking work. Or then you can play with the most punk, fucking Sid Vicious kind of guy, who maybe you've got a bit of a vibe going because he's a rebel or whatever, but his skills are not quite there.
Yeah.
Then there comes a point where you're like, am I looking for image, or am I trying to make my music good and get it out there? Because with this guy, maybe we've got a bit of a vibe, but it's not going to fucking work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, I think, like I always say, if you've only got so much time in the day, right, and you've got so many moments that you can spend on things, and if you spend those moments on things that aren't fucking important, then you waste the time that you can spend on the things that are important, and the good things and the positive things, and driving yourself forward, or your music, the song, whatever it is, the project, whatever you're working on. So if unfortunately, image is a big thing for a lot of people. I honestly, it's never been a thing for me because I just don't care. I think that.
But you have an image, like you're quite sort of striking. Like you do have one, but probably it's one of those things that I would say in the background plays into a lot of positive situations for you because you'll just stick in people's mind.
Yeah.
I think
I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not in a kind of contrived way, but just like when you meet a character and whether that person looks characterful or acts characterful or you're going to come away in a sea of otherwise equally capable people remembering the character.
All right.
You know what I mean? And then you go like, who do I remember? They let's talk about
the fucking bearded guy.
Yeah, the bearded South African guy. Yeah, when I got hired for Eckerberg, the photographs they saw, I had a big like ringleader's moustache at the time, right?
Yeah.
Which I'd shaved off by the time I met them. Yeah, and I remember them saying, they'd argued about whether to call me because one of them was like into the idea of this moustache and the other one was like, no, it looks ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And, they looked at loads of other people and I just stuck because I had this ridiculous, thing.
And then you went in without the moustache and they're like, wait, you're not the right
They didn't
guy.
notice. That's the thing. We got to the end of I went around to their flat to meet them and then at the end we'd gone well, we sort of got on and, it seemed like they might call me to do it. I wasn't sure. And they were like, where's your moustache? I'm like, oh, yeah.
Stick on.
Stick on. I just do that to get people to call me. But
Or just draw on your picture like a little moustache and a little devil goatee.
Specs. I should have walked in with the Groucho Marx and the nose and the thing on. But I'm sure it's the same in sound engineering. Is that if there are so many equally capable people out there, and it is very competitive. If you're a musician, if you're a piano player or drummer or whatever, you're going to get the right notes in the right order with a good feel, like virtually all of them. Like there's billions of great musicians out there, billions of them. Like there's no shortage.
Yeah.
And so I sort of went, I guess at one point I went, okay, that's fine. I remember going to even the auditions for James McCartney, and there was a lot of people. They'd gone to music schools. I think they'd gone to 2 or 3 music schools and just put the word out, and so everybody showed up. And I was like, how am I going to stand out? How do you stand out?
Did you just pull your cock out?
Sure.
Right, rock out with your cock out.
That's it.
Literally.
Yeah, he's the cock guy. Yeah, get the cock guy. I wore a hat. Like I wore a hat to stand out. Like that was contrived.
Like a fedora.
It was like a 8-panel flat cap, like a chimney sweeps hat, And I was like, I'll do that. I have like thick rim specs, and in part that's kind of so the image people will remember something about you. It's all like it is a bit contrived, but you just have to be aware. All these other bass players are great. They're all going to get the right notes in the right order. And why? How are they going to make the decision? What's going to swing the thing your way by 1%? How are you going to weight the dice a little bit? And things like that it really help. I remember researching James and realizing he's vegan or veggie vegan. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And I'd left the house with leather shoes on, and I was like,
whoops.
Yeah, maybe obviously that's not the biggest deal in the world, but I tell you what, I'll go back and put trainers on, and just those little 0.5% things which will speak to people's subconscious. I always think those are really valuable and often overlooked when you're looking to get work, to get gigs.
Well, I mean, it's maybe like a bit of woo-woo, but like it's almost as if you add to your aura or something. There's a vibe that you give, and it could be send out a vibration that's maybe a bit more positive or whatever. And like you say, it's the little subconscious things that people don't necessarily pick up, but they pick it up.
They feel it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
There was a great I saw it online, but it was a masterclass being given by this drummer. I think it was Sean. I want to say Sean Pelton, just because there was a name that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And he was standing in front of a room full of young drum students, all persistently whacking their sticks on,
Paradiddling.
paradiddling on their knees, like, oh my God. And Sean Pelton's quite a flamboyant dresser, but he's also a very busy, successful New York drummer. And he's doing this masterclass, and he's very tongue-in-cheek, he's quite a funny guy. And he goes, so you guys want to know, huh? You guys want to know how do you get the gig? You all want to know the secret. You all want to know what the little thing is that you should do to get the gig. Well, he's got like a flip chart in front of him. He's been going through this flip chart, and he says, well, you guys just have to, it's simple, you guys just have to ask yourself a question. And the question's written on the next page of the flip chart. He says, you have to ask yourself, am I an asshole? Because if the answer's yes,
get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it right there.
That sums up exactly what what has been mentioned a few times, and it's the truth is you can teach technical ability, but you can't teach attitude.
Right. Yeah.
And I think for us in our world is a big thing.
Yeah.
If you, because as you said, how do you stand out from people who are equally or even more able than yourself?
Yeah.
But I've seen it many times where great engineers are really just not nice people, and they tend to kind of fade away a little bit more. Yeah. Where you might get a gig over somebody who's better than you technically, but you've got the right attitude.
Yeah.
And it's a 50-50 thing in our world. I think probably maybe even 60-40 towards the attitude side. Where you, as long as you're willing to do the work and you're you can relate to the band in a friendly way, and you can try and make their work a little bit easier, because what I do is I service you, right? And I service the crowd, and then also myself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But the people came to see the band, and I'm there to help the band do the best job that they can do and be as comfortable as they are. So the people that leave have had a good time, and then it's a success for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not about me, it's not about my thing, whatever. So you always have to try and accommodate and facilitate wherever you can to make their jobs easier.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think if, regardless of whether you're good or not good, if you've got the right attitude, and even when you make mistakes, because we all make mistakes, it's not, nobody's fucking perfect.
I make a point of it.
Right. Yeah. Just like the first thing you do. Right. Now it's out the way.
Yeah.
Everybody can relax. Just to communicate that and say, all right, this is what that was. I'm sorry, and I've fixed it.
Yeah.
It's not always about getting it right. It's about having the ability to fix something really quickly, to kind of and that will restore the faith, if you will.
Yeah.
Because I think it's sometimes hard as well for a touring musician to not have their own engineer, and then going from venue to venue to venue, where sometimes you'll have a good engineer, or sometimes you'll have the chef moonlighting as an engineer.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard for them to trust somebody with their thing. So I can see where sometimes there's a bit of tension, but if you can just relieve that a little bit by showing some kind of professionalism and ability to be able to do your job, and also communicate that with them.
Yeah.
I think
just being confident and being relaxed, will go a long way. I would take a confident, relaxed sound engineer who's okay above the ninja who's an asshole. I can't tell you the amount of times, like I talked a lot where we've been in that situation and we're taking the house engineer everywhere we go. So every day it's a new guy, and you end up being able to refine. You have like a paragraph where you go, okay, this is what the band wants to sound like. We're essentially acoustic, it's very vocal heavy. You just want to lift the sound off the stage. We don't want this to sound heavy or bright. You just it's think, and we give them some references. Think this, think that, and I always thought that the good sound engineers would go, okay, that's good. Thanks very much. That helps me. That's really helpful. And then the amount of times they go, well, I'm the sound engineer. I'll decide what this sounds like, you know, and they just go and put the death metal kick drum on, and like it's so loud it hurts, you know, and so it is, but confidence, you know, and just being relaxed, and it goes a long way. Long way. Yeah.
I find as well that for me, I make a point to go as soon as the musicians walk in for sound check on the first day, whether I know them or not. Some bands I see kind of regularly, once a year or so, twice a year, but regardless, I'll go up and shake everybody's hand, say, hey, I'm T, I'm your sound guy, you know, this is what we got here. If there's anything else you need, let us know. We'll, you know, let's work together, let's make this a good gig. And then already immediately, like, that kind of puts them a bit more relaxed, you know, like, okay, cool, this guy seems confident, he's, you know, stage is set up the way that we wanted it to be set up, so let's see how this goes. At least, you know, it's a good start. It's
a very tense time, you know, the sound check. You know, I don't know if you kind of were like, I always found it the most stressful part of any day.
Well, it is, because that's, you know, that's where you got to get it right, and you got to iron out those things, because once you've done that, the gigs basically run itself. Sure. Well, in theory, that's how it's supposed to work.
But do you observe that in the bands? Is it noticeable that, you know, people are, because, you know, I would imagine...
I mean, if they're going to be nervous, then that's when they're going to be nervous, yes.
Yeah.
I'm quite fortunate in that the musicians and the bands that I work with, you know, at Ronnie Scott's or Boysdale, they're very seasoned, you know. They know their craft quite well, so they'll be relaxed. But like I said, if a band was going to be nervous, that's when they were going to be nervous, for sure.
Right, yeah.
And once we've kind of got that out the way, 6 o'clock doors open, they get something to eat, you know, and we're all cool. Everybody's had a good sound check. Nobody's ears are bleeding. Then you know, then it's a good start. Then they can actually go and do what they came there to do. So yeah, I mean, if the sound checks are, I think also
people are hungry then as well. Like they like tummies are empty and they're probably tired.
It's on the point where they start to get hangry.
If they're gonna go that way. I just find it always so stressful. You know, and it was sometimes if you know the group well, and you can sort of, and you've got a routine. You know, like for me, I would obviously go after the drums first, then bass, you know. And no one really wants to just be hanging around for a drum sound check. Like, no one really wants to be in that room, you know, unless it's your job to be there. So everyone kind of disappears.
Yeah.
But like, I can't go that far away.
No, because you've got to be on call.
Yeah, you've got to kind of wait within earshot.
As soon as you hear overheads, yeah, good. Drum kit, right, that sounds like a drum kit.
Where's the fucking bass player? I'm like, Jesus, right.
But then you got to ask the drummer, can you just stop playing so I do my ding? Right, sounds like a bass guitar, there we go.
Right, my theory about drums, sound checks and bass sound checks, right, this is my theory. Drums, this goes for recording, like, obviously I have my studio, I notice this in the studio. Drums are a ball ache, right? They take forever, they require... 4, 6, 8 mics, whatever. That equal amount of channels on your desk, fucking compressors, this, that, the mix back to the drummer. He's probably got his own fucking mixing desk because he's picky bugger. Takes half an hour to get it right, blah, blah, blah. And
bass
done, right? So drums, not meant to be. Right, they're not a naturally occurring phenomena. You have to force it. It's never was supposed to be like that. So that's why it's difficult to get it to sound right. Bass meant to be. That's why it just flows. It's done like that.
Yeah. Boom. Good. Great. That's it. I've got a signal.
That's all you need to know.
I've got a good signal. It's not clipping. Right. Play your heaviest thing. Play your quietest thing. Good.
Go and get a sandwich.
Go and get a cup of tea.
I went to see this guy Jar Wobble, who's one of my favourite musicians, bass player, and he came from the punk scene that the Pistols were in, and has become this kind of I guess like a dub bass player. Plays these great 2-3 note bass lines, very repetitive, very hypnotic, and he has this kind of band of characters. They're all very, very different people. He's got like a sort of a shredding metal guitarist, a really well-dressed dandy kind of cornet player, a guy at the back on a laptop doing kind of samples,
right.
And they'll, he's like older than the rest of them by 30 years, But he's very funny, this guy Jar Wobble, And he talks about the bass, and he says, yeah, the bass has got no known musical predators. He says, because it doesn't move very fast. He says, because it doesn't fucking have to. You know? It's like a sort of the lion. It's just, lollops slowly through the musical jungle, and it's not scared of anything. Doesn't have to move very quick. I thought it was a good observation.
Brilliant.
But just going back to the soundtrack, the reason I brought it up, it was as, let's say, an employee of the band. You're there as a sort of session guy or a side. What's the expression? Sideman. Then you will often bear the brunt of people's anxiety.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And I'm sure you feel that too.
Whether you're with the band or not.
Right.
Whether they're, that's what I said. If they were going to be nervous, this is when they're going to be nervous.
But I bet the moment, and you may be that you realised this from day one, but I bet the moment you went, they're not pissed off with me. This is not about me.
No,
this is
an
an expression of anxiety about how they feel about the situation. And it might be that they just want the gig to go well, and they're nervous because it's a home crowd, or they're doing an unfamiliar song or something. But the moment that realization took hold, that the best thing I can do is just be like obsequious, like subservient to some extent, and just go,
kill them with kindness.
Exactly. Absorb it. Don't take it personally. Do everything. If that, if the sound check's taken ages and we're running out of time and you haven't done your sound check bit yet, just accept that, and be professional enough to, can I just hear a little bit great done, and just accept that they should have, the singer whose gig it is should take their time to get it right, and if that means doors are opening in 30 seconds and you have, only a small amount of time.
Push the doors back.
Yeah, push the doors back, but also, be prepared to, to sort of say, okay, that's fine. It's not perfect, but I can go with that, and not to then kind of go, I think you're fine. Could you just give me a bit more high mid in the, and do the things which you might normally do had the artist taken a quote normal amount of time to do their share. So, but accepting it, absorbing it.
But with that is also communication is very important, very, very important. If you. Regardless, like I said, I'm very fortunate that the majority of the bands that I work with, we have a good rapport from the get go. Like I said, if you go in with a strong, almost offense, if you will, like, hey, I'm your guy, let's do this, right? And if you keep that communication going throughout the whole time, it's a way in which you can do it without being a dick and saying, guys. Right, we've got 2 hours until doors. I know there's a fair amount to be set up, but if we could, do that, and then they're like, yeah, sweet, no problem, and then just sort of like reminding them, okay, well, it's half an hour until doors. Anything that you guys want to, because a lot of the times they'll kind of, there's two ways of doing it. They'll either all get on there and start jamming and just start going for it, which is also a good thing. It's but then at some point you have to stop them and say, listen, okay, let's just sort out monitors, make sure everybody's happy, comments, complaints, suggestions, whatever you want to tell me now, and then you can jam again. Or it'll be of the very sort of professional where the drummer will be in and he'll do his thing and he'll come first, and then the bass player arrives, and they kind of do it like that because it's been drilled in like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, communication, I think, is just the most important thing, and to be able to communicate with a band is a learned skill with time, and that's when, just going back to what you were saying before about having a young engineer. I've found a few times where younger engineers, I would babysit them because they would come in with the band and all that, and they still got that arrogance of a 22-year-old,
yeah.
Where, what are you going to tell me?
Yeah, they haven't fallen yet.
I don't think they kind of, because I had this one guy where the band brought in their engineer, and they're all on in-ears, apart from the singer who's got ears and wedges. And it was super, super, super loud. And the singer was like, the kick drum is very clicky. Can you just? And I looked at his EQ, and he just, he really, there was nothing in there apart from 60 and 5K. Like, he took everything out the middle.
A big smiley face.
And I'm like, well, maybe if you just sort of like open this up a little bit, just then you got some warmth on stage, and you can bring it down without having it clicky. And it's like, no, there's none of these frequencies in there, so I'm just going to keep it like that.
Yeah,
it's your gig, bro.
Good luck. Yeah,
and that was the last suggestion that I gave him. And it's just, to be able to take advice or criticism in a way, to not get bent out of shape about it, and to also to be able to discern who's an asshole and who's really wanting to give you good advice, or what they're saying is valid. Like, if somebody says, I can't hear this, can you turn it up? Have a listen first. Don't just off the bat like, fuck off. Which, sometimes it does get to the point where you have to tell these people to go away, because we are there to do a job, and the reason we're there is because we're kind of proven that we can do this job. I'm not a chef moonlighting as a sound engineer in a pub somewhere. I kind of know what I'm doing.
I wonder how often the sound engineer walks into the kitchen and has a go. For every chef that moonlights as a sound engineer, there must be a sound engineer that goes, I'll take over here.
Guys, wait, I'm cooking burgers tonight.
Hand me that apron. Who are we talking about? You're a sound engineer. Get out of my way.
Doesn't happen. I've had to do that once with a chef during the sound check, and it was like an 8-piece band, so there was enough of them on stage. And I normally run a sound check louder than the gig, because I need to know where my headroom is.
Okay, yeah.
Monitors, front of house, everything. I need to know if all of the sudden 200 people come in here and it's all of a sudden the sound gets sucked up by the bodies in there. Can I make it louder without making it feedback? I need to know where my headroom is. I need to know where I can push things to. And then, when I'm happy with it and I think it's stable, then I'll bring it back down to normal volume. And chef walked through and he's like, oh, it's terribly loud, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a sound check. He walked away and then he came back. He's like, it's too loud, you have to turn it down. And I just looked at him. I was like, sorry, man, what do you do? I'm the chef. I said, and your work is in the kitchen, right? He's like, yeah. I said, so get back in the kitchen, do your job. I'm doing my job. Leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah.
Right? I don't tell you how to cook burgers. No. Just go away. I'm trying to do my job, and you're impeding me. I don't come in the kitchen and bother you, do I?
You don't get it as a musician so much, but I see that I've done a very, very, very small amount of very low level live sound engineering, basically for an acoustic open mic night, right? So the simplest gig you can imagine.
And everybody's got an opinion.
Everyone's got, oh my God, it was a little window into the world of like, Jesus Christ, But you do get kind of equivalents, like I have, done my fair share of being in function bands, and I think there's a kind of popular misconception. There's almost like pity when I talk to people sometimes, and they go, so you're a professional musician, like, do you do weddings? I'm like, yeah.
Those fuckers pay my bills, bro.
That's the best paying gig, that I have.
100%. There's no shame in that. People.
It's bullshit.
I understand completely what you're saying, because people do kind of look down on that. And I tell you what, man, fair enough, there are shitty function bands out there. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But one of the function bands that I worked with, the Sessions, absolutely amazing musicians, every single one of them,
of course. Yeah.
And I think I was speaking last week with Christy about this. That's really delicious. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. My 2-year-old son mixed it. So
it's almost because the musicians in these bands, they're so interchangeable, because it's never it's when you're available. Yes, they might have a main lineup, but depths come in all the time.
Yeah.
And to be able to fall into that dynamic of people who know each other and to be able to do the job well, where people come up to you and you're part of one of the most special days of people's lives.
Yeah.
Right? So people don't understand the gravity of it. If you make this suck for them, then it's gonna leave a bad mark on their good day. But if they come up to you and they're almost crying, like, thank you so much, that there's a special feeling to that. And there's nothing to be scoffed at.
Nothing at all. I mean,
it doesn't just have to be weddings. It can be any kind of special occasion.
No, I mean, I'd say I always. And when people have that reaction that they say, it's almost like, you do weddings, do you? I'm like, yeah, I do weddings. And I've done it for a long time, and I'm probably not going to do it for that many more years. I'm building my studio up, and that's going fine. I'd rather kind of, have not come home late and drive on the motorway at 2 in the morning. But like all gigs, when they say, they're almost like it's a negative thing. I always say the kind of same thing, which is out of every 10 gigs, regardless of what the situation is, and you could be playing, you could be touring the States with James McCartney, or you could be doing weddings, or you could be playing in pubs, or you could be doing whatever, is that out of 10 of those, 2 will be amazing. They'll knock your socks off, and they'll be really magical. 2 will be awful. And maybe that 6 you just won't remember that much about.
They're just the same.
They're just
another day at the office.
Yeah. They're all like that. I would take a really great, corporate gig or a wedding or a function over, one of the
touring and the sleeping on the floor.
Yeah, one of the bottom 2. If the gig's not great, the gig's not great. It doesn't matter who it's in front of, what music you're playing. If the gig's not great, that's it. That's the end of the story. And sometimes you don't have control over that. It might just be that nobody bought tickets, or it might just be that, the groom got drunk and smashed the place up or something, But I think also there's a misconception about the type of musicians that play in function bands, and you can... all types of musicians play in function band, and you gravitate towards your, a friend of mine always talks about finding your tribe, like socially, whatever, you gravitate, you find your tribe, and that happens musically as well. So although, yes, they're all function bands, and they're all more or less playing the same songs, for that very reason which you talked about, which is that people are jumping in and out of these bands the whole time, because
they've got other things going.
Yeah, if, Adele rings up and goes, can you come and play drums for me or whatever, and that means depping out a function, of course you're going to do that.
Of course you're going to do
and
that.
And you know what? You can benefit somebody else, because you can give somebody who doesn't have a gig, and that deputy system works so well because of that. Some people don't like it. I've worked in bands where you're not allowed to dep this out. I'm like, well, this isn't going to work then for you or me.
No, but unless you pay me some kind of retainer, that nobody's going to do that.
Exactly.
You need to be able to guarantee me my rent and bills for the month. Yeah,
it's simple. But you can look around sometimes, and because of that perception that being in a covers band or a function band isn't perhaps that high value of a position, of a job, it's interesting to see how punters react to you, and how they treat you. And I've looked around in some bands, where I've just done depped for a band, and I've looked around and gone, wow, there's some really bloody serious musicians here, like that guy played drums for Adele, say, or that guy was in Tom Jones band, or and you go, holy smoke, like that.
Yeah, you get to play with top level musicians, which normally you wouldn't be able to if you're in the original circuit, or if you're in the covers band. I mean, the covers band maybe a lot more, and then you get I think function bands and cover bands are I kind of look at them differently, because covers bands will probably, in my mind, will be the guys who play pubs and venues and these sorts of things, and function bands I would more be like functions, weddings and birthdays and
all playing
sorts of
that
things.
one set list that they all play.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose cover bands and function bands are the same thing, but I kind of I draw a divide there, because I don't tend to find covers bands who do the venues and do the pubs. I don't find them at weddings and funerals.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas function bands, I don't find them in the pubs or the venues. You understand?
Yeah.
That's kind of the only divide, but they're the same thing because they're also the covers bands. They're also interchangeable with the musicians because there's depping going on and all that. I mean, probably in the original scene you'd find the least amount of depping.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's almost problematic. There's certainly situations where, in a couple of originals bands, in one I was, sort of, I would say a member of the band. Obviously not like anyone would identify with the band, but you still get put in the photographs and put on the promo and stuff. I was always really afraid of
losing that.
A little bit, but afraid of having to, I guess of losing that, but being presented with a situation where I'd have to turn down the bigger paying function.
It's happened to me a lot, it's happened to me when I was working with James, and it happened to me when I was working with Ceramic as well,
right.
Where, I mean, it was, well, we're going to get this band from the ground up, and you're here at the beginning of it, and when we get there, we're going to look after you. And the there never gets there.
Yeah, I give up.
A lot of the times, I've seriously screwed myself financially by doing that, and by having the integrity, maybe, because I said I'm with you, and then I'm with you, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I know exactly where you're coming from.
I think like anyone listening, my take on all that now with a few years of experience is that if you get involved with a new organisation, and in my experience there's been maybe 4 or 5 over 10 or 15 years, say, and they're either a full-time relationship or it's the guts of, it's 3/4 of a job, and you just have to top it up with some sort of some debt work or something. Is that nearly always the opening wage is the highest wage you'll ever get. So if they're going, you're going to get this much per gig or this much per show,
and then we'll look at giving you more later.
But yeah,
never going to happen.
Right, but then and then as things get better, we'll pay you more. Right now, only one of 2 things really ever happens in my experience is that either things don't get better. That's the end of that, or things do get better, and it doesn't filter through. So like you get a nicer tour bus. Yeah. Better hotel rooms, and I'm like, no.
Better food.
It's all well and good, and. But
I'm still waiting for that.
Back here. Like don't spend it on that. You said this was, So I think that's not like a malicious thing. It's not like a contrived, devious thing. People just forget, They just kind of,
I remember we did say to someone that we'd rather not stay in the nice hotels and just give us more every day, and that didn't happen.
No.
Which I don't understand. I mean, but then, we got to stay in places that I would never be able to afford to stay.
Right. Do you remember?
But that to me is like the least amount of what I remember, that who gives a shit. I was, and like I said, unfortunately, sometimes I've done myself in financially by committing to these things.
Yeah. You live and learn though, don't you? I mean, I think that's good take, the experience, would you, with hindsight, we're all still alive. We're all living in a nice place. We're all comfortably, our quality of life is good, And I often wonder about that. I remember staying in that, we had like in New York, like in that Essex house, yeah. Like what a hotel, like on Central Park, overlooking Central Park. And
he was never been in Central Park.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he was the whole week. I hope you raise that with him, like next when you speak to him.
But no, he said it's a point now. He's made it a point. He's not going to go there ever. Even when he goes back to New York, he's not going to go to Central Park.
Okay. Fine.
Well, he did back then. I don't know. Maybe he's changed his mind now. It's beautiful in there, though. It's lovely.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing place. So I probably at the time there might have been an element of frustration around seeing huge hotel bills. I mean, vast amounts of money that boggled my mind, and going, well, we could stay in hotels that cost a third, a quarter,
which will still be nice.
Still be nice hotels, right?
And we can get more money.
And we can get paid more. And that wasn't, again, it's not even like an oversight or anything. You know, it was just.
It was what it was.
It was what it was. You know, and like you say, you know, however many years it is later, 8 years or something later. You know, would you rather have the experience of having stayed there, knowing that now everything's basically okay anyway, or would you have rather had a few extra quid in your pocket at the time and stayed in hotels which you wouldn't remember? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I probably could have at that time benefited financially more from, you know. But again, you know, it's not, like I said, it's not the hotels I remember. It's all the fucking bars we went into that I remember. Or halfway remember. And yeah, we had some good times. I got interviewed for South African radio in Los Angeles.
Right.
Yeah, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Just random met this radio presenter in the lift, in the Standard in you know, in Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, another Afrikaans person. What are you doing here? Here on tour." And then I got interviewed next to the pool. And yeah, that went out. I still haven't heard that.
Oh, right.
I should really go and listen to it.
What was the angle? Like
it was just another Afrikaans person that's made it out. Well, not another one that's made it out, but it's like, oh, I met you here in Los Angeles. You're on tour with a band, and you live in London. You know, just what's your story? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's kind of like this, but I was on your side of the table. Yeah. So you now tell me a little bit about your studio, man. You started getting into the studio. You've got your own studio. Tell us a little bit about that. Is it big enough to record in there?
Yeah, it's 400 square foot. So it's live room, control room. You know, comfortably fit. The most musicians I've recorded at once is 5.
That's not bad.
It's not bad. That was a squeeze. 4 is very comfortable. And if you're tracking individually, you know, it doesn't matter.
That's what it
doesn't
is.
matter, yeah. But yeah, it's a really nice vibe. You know, I kind of want to, you know, I always had some kind of recording device from day one. I got a guitar and a tape 2-track at the same time, like a Tascam Porta 02, and just learnt to use that, learnt to bounce, learnt to, you know, multi-track, and then got a 4-track, and then got a Fostex 8-track.
I remember that.
DMT8VL.
Yeah, that recorded onto. Did you get the one that records onto the CD-ROM or the?
No,
was it a memory stick one?
Internal hard drive.
Oh yes.
No method of getting the data out other than bouncing it down to. I used to master it down to mini disc.
Yeah.
And it had 12 minutes of record capacity, or 8 tracks. Yeah. So you could obviously go 24 at 4-track or whatever you want. And a little, you know, Yamaha RY10 drum machine and a bass and a guitar, you know, and used to, right from the get-go, used to kind of really enjoy making stuff, making sounds, you know. I never sang or anything at the time, so it was just grooves and whatnot. And smoking weed and just kind of getting like losing a night. Yeah, really, that was always it. That was always the point of music for me. You know, the I never ever once set out
almost going onto a different plane, into a new sort of dimension.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Just getting lost and, you know, making shapes. You know, and so, and actually the plan was before I left Leicester me and a buddy of mine put together a business plan to make like a mobile recording setup. You know, back in the days when that wasn't as straightforward as it is now.
Yeah.
And
you'd have to have a fucking trailer, mate.
Yeah, we had a business plan for about 10 grand, and we were going to buy a van as part of that. You know,
right.
And some whatever the gear was at the time, I don't really remember. But so that was always I nearly went down that route, but then moved to London.
Played the bass.
Played the bass, yeah. And sort of forgot about that plan for 10, 15 years. But always had a computer set up at home, Pro Tools.
I bet it was sort of like on the slow burner in the subconscious there, and there was little plans formulating and little, I can use that. One day when I get that. I find that, you know, I've got something that I think about, and then it just goes sort of on the slow burner for a bit, and as soon as I'm like, I can use that for that in the bank.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's, you know, possibly what you're doing, because now you went into it all the way, and you've got a proper place.
Yeah, I do. And I think it came like when the James McCartney gig finished, and, you know, the management emailed and went, for now that's it, we're just going to Park.
Well, at least you got that. I still haven't got
really?
that email.
I think we got. I don't know. Well, I definitely.
No, you all got
you
the
didn't
email.
get one, right?
No, I got nothing.
But that's unfortunate.
So yeah.
But I'm sure somebody might have relayed the message to you at some point.
Oh, yeah, it got relayed. I'm not waiting for the next gig, that's for sure.
Like just sat in your boxes by the phone, like it has been ages.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Like, guys, Master Tour hasn't updated.
Yeah, hello, Dan. So when that, I wasn't. I guess it was a bit of a bombshell. I'd gotten really used to doing that, and used to the money and the schedule and everything.
Yeah, it was a bit of a letdown, to be honest.
Yeah, and I have a friend of mine who's a keys player, and he's been, I would say, arguably more successful as a musician than me, but he had a similar trajectory, in that he'll play with somebody for a bit, that ends, and then you go back to doing functions, really, because that's where you meet people and how you build. One way you can build your network, and then you go off and you have another relationship with a different organisation or band. And he always says that he was sat on the tarmac in a plane at like 10 in the morning, sipping a G&T, ready to go to the States to do Letterman or something.
Yeah.
And he said he made the mistake of thinking this thought to himself, which was that, this is my life now.
Oh.
Right, which is like the fatal error. And then like the next day the email comes, it's sorry, the funding's been pulled, the record label doesn't do this anymore, but the first time that happens, and for me that was at the end of the
McCartney thing.
Yeah, we did the album. We never got to tour that out. We toured somebody else's record. Did it back to front. We toured the EPs, then made an album, and then that stopped.
Yeah.
So that that was hard. I won't dress that up. The first time that happened, you think
it's hard. No, it's very hard.
You think the world's ended. You think you've done something wrong. You don't know. You fought for 15 years to get that. It's your first decent thing, or it was for me, and then you go, shit, I don't have anything. I've actually jacked in everything to do this a little bit, So at that point,
you feel betrayed almost, don't you?
Yeah, a bit. You do. I mean, with hindsight, now I don't.
Like like I said, that first time is really hard. You're like, okay, well,
it really knocks you because it's.
But I suppose it helps if it's everybody, not just you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I went and had I guess the person I hung out with most of that band was Tobias, so we worked together a lot before that band and quite a lot after too. And so, we were like ringing each other up going, I don't know, dude, how do you feel? Like, it's weird. I feel like, like what's, like your purpose has been lost slightly.
Wind out of your sails a bit.
Yeah. But then, with hindsight, at that point I went, well, what do I do? Okay, well, I better pick up some more teaching like I was. I better pick up some functions like I was. I never really let go of that.
Those guys. Hey, remember, I haven't called you in about 2 years.
Yeah, I'm sorry about smashing your place up at that last party in my arrogant rage. I'm
sober now, I swear.
Yeah, and
you said that last time.
Yeah, it's just
turned out with a bag of MDMA.
But what a night! It was worth it. And but that was the point at which I went, okay, what else can I do? I had kind of lots of free time on my hands, and I made a record for myself. I crowdfunded a record. I went back to that. I was like, I've got some time. I might not have this time again.
Nice.
So finished off writing some songs. Got crowdfunded, $3 or $4 grand, I think, in the end, and made a record which I more or less recorded myself at home. I had, a Pro Tools and an interface, OK interface, and then went to a nice studio to do the drums properly and gave it to somebody else to mix. But kind of produced it and recorded it myself and put that out. And people started kind of going, oh, can you help me with this? Can you come and do this for me? Not enough to kind of sustain a wage, but it put an idea in my head about, hang on, if I could actually just put the word out, maybe people will pay for this, And initially, it was a corner of a room in my flat.
As it starts,
a pair of speakers and a computer. And I was getting hip-hop guys coming round, just doing a vocal on a beat, or somebody wanted some mixing, mostly kind of not very interesting gigs. Mostly at the beginning I was charging very small amounts of money for very simple work, because that's all I could do. So all I felt I wanted to say that I could do.
No, I understand that 100%. Like you want to prove to yourself first that you can do the job that you say that you can do.
Yeah.
Right. So you take the smaller ones on first, and it's like a trial for yourself. Even I'm of the exact same ilk. Right. I'm not a recording engineer. I can do it. I know how to do it. There's no problem. I've never had any problems or any complaints about my recording abilities or none of that. Right. Even mixing, I can do that. But I'm not confident enough to go and put myself on a website and say, I can mix your album.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I'll start off with people I know and friends and a student or this or that. Once that gets where I'm happy with that and I get more than one or two people saying, oh, good job you did on that one, then I'm like, okay, fine, let's move on to the next little step. Just so, I think for me, because maybe I'm sort of like selfish in terms of I don't want to sully my name, because I worked my hands to the bone to get where I am, right? And to have a little bit of people know that I can do a job to that degree, and if I transition into mixing, I would want it to be on the same level. So for me, I would kind of like maybe do it in the shadows a little bit until I get to the point where I'm like, right, guys, I can do this.
Yeah, I have bloomed. Yeah. No, very similar thing. You know,
I respect that.
Like you know, it's been great to take the thing that you focus on to a good level. You know, like to take bass playing and doing live sound engineering to a level that's, you know, good, you know, professional, you know, respectable level. And then you go, okay, well, maybe I've now been through that process of working out how to be comfortable at one thing. I can apply that same process to something else now, but you forget how long it takes. It takes you get, you know, you just think, okay, well, it took me 20 years, you know, to do it. The first 10 of which I'm figuring out how to play the fucking thing and sat in a room on my own, and then the next 10 of which you're kind of trying to get, you know, make it and get better at it. It's obviously a bit quicker the next time because you've got more information,
got more experience as well to draw on. You're not going to make the same mistakes, or hopefully.
No.
You know, I do find myself reflecting a lot, and you know, like I said, there's something that's on the slow burner in the back, but like I'm walking around, oh, that's going to help with that, or that's going to help with that thing. Oh, remember that thing that I wanted to do? I can do that there. I can, you know, there's always like little thingies going in there and going on and firing all the way, all over the place.
Yeah.
And it kind of like with you almost managing your time during the day through these little things that you're like, oh, I got to do that, and I got to do that, and I've got this thing that I still want to do, and maybe I should take 5 minutes and think about this thing, and oh yeah, I have to have a shower, and then I got to go to work, and then, you know, it's but, you know, I think, you know, your adult brain is maybe a little bit more seasoned in how to do these processes. And hopefully, you know, you can get to a point where you're like, up. So assimilating things are a bit quicker. Yeah. You know where to store things.
You've learned how to learn, essentially. You know, that's the skill.
Yeah,
you know.
Get that memory palace just stacked up nicely.
Yeah, mine's a faded image of, like, you know, forgetting my keys and walking out of the house and going, oh, what did I... I've forgotten something.
Unlocking the door, going in. Yes, I did switch off the oven.
yeah. And like, how many times do I go up and down my stairs in my house, just going, oh, I forgot that thing again.
But you know how it works, right? This is really weird. Your brain perceives every door like a new chapter. So if you walk through a door, it like shuts that off. So if you forget what you wanted to do, go back to the place where you had the thought. 90% of the time, you're going to have that thought again. That's what it was. And then you go back. It's weird, because as soon as you go through a door, your brain goes like, that's done, next thing.
Maybe I would guess then I should have a sign in each room which says, can't remember what you came in for? Go back into the last room. Because I'm not going to forget. How would I remember where I had the thought? Like, you know. But yeah, you know, you know, it's been really fun, and it built, you know, the studio built from a corner of a room to a whole room, and then to an attic. We bought a place in North London, and then I built a studio in the garden, in like a kind of garden studio vibe, like a cabin, and then a year ago we moved from there, and I took on some premises for the first time.
A studio.
It's a proper studio, yeah. And I like it. People come in now.
My God, nice.
It's taken me it was a real estate. It used to be an old radio station, and when I was looking around, I was looking at lots of like these studio complexes, which are kind of just corridors of white cubes. You go in and they're 200 square foot, sound treatment, nicely done, nice places to hang out. With a cafe, maybe a communal area, lots of other people like you there, but that worried me a bit. I didn't want to come to a white cube to try and be creative at work. It just wasn't my favourite thing.
Hang out with all the cool dudes.
Yeah, do you know what? The creative hub. I see the value. I do understand that. But do you know what? I just prefer to be out there on my own a bit.
Yeah, man.
It's always have.
I'm here doing my thing. I'm not here to fucking socialise with all you hipsters.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And so I took this place on, and it was a real state. It was a radio station that had been kind of quickly abandoned for one reason or another. There was loads of cables everywhere. It was a real shit state. Did it up. And it's taken a while to get it all feeling nice. It's taken me best part of 6 months or a year to, just do little things, put up some like groovy curtains, man. Purple, groovy curtains, and like get a nice couch in there. And now I really like it when people walk in and go, a proper studio.
Nice.
And I'm like, yes,
that's right.
Yeah. Thank you. And nobody walks in and goes, oh, cool desk. Everybody walks because nobody knows what it really.
Well, it goes back to the aura of the place, right? It's a vibe that you get out there, I think. There's a lot to be said about your intentions and the sort of vibrations that you leave in a place. I think there might be some resonance to that. If you've got a place that's always just fucking negative, there's something about it that's probably driving that on. And if this is your place and you give it a good vibe, you can have a great desk and you can have all the pre's and everything, but along with your attitude and your sort of vibrations you give off, if that resonates in the place and people walk in and are immediately like, I feel welcome here.
Yeah.
Apart from sticking on some coffee or baking a bread, just to let people be more at ease. I think, that it brings a lot to it. It's the same as when musicians come in and I say, how you doing? Let's do this, right?
Yeah.
And you bring in the go,
you forget. It's easy to forget. It's nerve-wracking for people to come into a studio. Often it's their own money. The people I work with, 9 times out of 10, it's their own money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the. They're not insignificant amounts of money. To make a recording studio work, you have to be charging in the hundreds of pounds a day.
You have to.
You just have to pay yourself, pay your rent, pay the tax, pay the repairs, blah 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 blah. I don't remember the last time I had a spare 400 quid to go and record a song. Not very often, really. So I'm very respectful and thankful that people come in and trust me to do that. But I'm also aware that it's incredibly important for these people for it to be right and for them to be comfortable. So that all those things, it's not really. You can design a studio to be technically amazing. To be all like for the seat to be 2/3 of the way down the room, so that you don't get the standing wave crap, and also all kinds of stuff. But then you go, well, that eats up like just hanging out space. Where the artist's gonna feel groovy, and where they're gonna come up with ideas, So I've tried to carry a bit of the type of music that I seemed to end up playing as a bass player into the recording setup that I have. I don't try and be all things to all people. In the beginning, I would say yes to stuff that I didn't listen to a lot of. Sometimes you came out with interesting results, but not always. Now, I have my website with the 10 songs that I'm most pleased with, that I think represent what I do the best. And then people go, what do you do? And you can just have a listen. And if you like that,
check the website.
I'll do that. Let's do that. If you like that mix, I can make it like that. Or if you like this arrangement.
I've got that template saved.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I really like it. And going back to something you said earlier, which is kind of, more or less, you're going to wake up, you're going to go to bed tonight, and you wake up in the morning, and you go to bed tomorrow night, wake up the following morning. And that is going to continue for you and I,
until it doesn't,
and maybe for another 40 or 50 years, or however long, 30, 40, 50, who knows? Like, what are you going to do with that time? What are you going to do? Like, got to do something.
Good, yeah.
You know, like, I don't play gigs in the daytime. Might as well make a recording studio.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Use that time that's there, and try and. There's only so much time that you've got on this earth, and you try and make what you have, the little time that you have, count.
Yeah.
And do things that make you happy, because then I think even if it's just I don't think I can stress this enough. I've got my job, which I'm very fortunate. I love my job. I'm doing the job that I've always wanted to do. Right, apart from being a farmer, which would have been my first choice. But
is there a way you can blend the two? They seem like really difficult things.
It's kind of poles apart, really. Yeah. I don't think
getting up, even just getting up early to be a farmer and going to bed late as a sound engineer.
I would then never sleep. I mean, I already sleep little as it is, but then I would never sleep, because farmers, you get up at 5 a.m. and that's usually when I get home from work. So I would really just never sleep, and I'd probably have a good run for about 3 years, but then I'd be dead.
Be burnt out.
Dead.
What killed him?
All these grey hair would be fully grey beard, and I'd be fucking dead. I'd look like I'm 80 years old, mate. No, but the thing that's important, whether or not you like your job, whether or not you like it, maybe just a little bit, it's okay, it's fine, but to have things outside of work that you do that does make you happy. Have a hobby. Have a hobby. Yeah. Have a fucking something that you're interested in that you can do. And I would urge anybody to have something that's creative. Write, paint, play an instrument.
Cooking is
cooking. Cooking is like with kids, we said before. It's such a joyous thing to share, and they love to get into it. But do something else.
Yeah.
That's not just sitting in front of the TV and fucking consuming. Hey, go for it, man. Fucking binge all you want, but also have other things. Because if you're as lucky as we are that we're doing something that we really like, you're in probably the top maybe 5% of the world, in terms of that. If you're somebody who maybe you're not doing something that you like, have something else that is going to make you happy, right? Because just being miserable is, that shit gives you.
It's no good. It's no good for you. But it's easy to get. I mean, you and I will know through working with musicians and people in the creative industry that there are a lot of malcontents out there. People who aren't ever happy with their lot.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Unfortunately, and also because there's the nature of. I'd say it's not the only job that this is the condition of, but it's certainly clearer in doing maybe it's just a freelance thing. I don't know, maybe, but where you're always looking at the next thing. You're like, okay, I've got this far, and that was always the goal to get this far, wherever this far is. And then you go, okay, I'll just enjoy this for 6 months. And you go, look at that guy over there. He's doing a little bit better than me. How do I get that far? And your brain is always like going, what's the next thing? Where's the next thing? Where's the next thing? How can I improve this? How do I get bigger profile gigs, a better, whatever, more interesting clients in the studio, or whatever the thing is. And it's easy to forget what a lucky bastard you are.
To not relish in the now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've said this. I can't remember if we were recording earlier, but like the way that the having children reminds you of that, because that's a great calming, effect that they had on me anyway. But but also easy to forget just that if you're doing what you love, you're sound engineering or playing or doing a studio or painting or cooking or whatever the thing that you really want to do is, that actually you should just enjoy that, And I remember going to a studio, and I was playing on this German guy. He was described to me. He might not thank me for saying this, but he was described to me as like the German David Bowie, and he'd had been around for 30 years. He's still very much active, and this guy rang up and went, "Do you want to go and play bass on this record? It's in Malta." I was having like a terrible time of it. I had no work, I was really like, literally had my head on the kitchen table, and this fucking phone rang, and it's like an amazing week's work. It's like, oh, thank you.
Yes.
And someone just punted one my
way.
Yeah. And went out there, and it was the full nice hotel, 3-4 days in the studio. Didn't have to learn any songs because he wanted just to do them all in the studio. Everything was done, just had to put the bass in. Got talking to the guy who was producing it, this guy David Vela, and I said, I do a little bit of production. It's not like this. Like, I had an amazing studio on the beach, and he's like, I'd forgotten that I was lucky, and he just went, yeah, it's a nice way to make a living, isn't it? It's like, fucking right, yeah, I forgot that, yeah, yeah. And there's me just obsessing about irrelevant details and getting mad and cross because it wasn't exactly right, And I remember that conversation, and it's a good one, he's quite a calm guy, and just any time that I'm kind of fucked off, or like I'm like, oh, come on, the quality of life is good, and you make a living doing something you really like, and those words, yeah, it's a nice way to make a living, isn't it? Oh yeah, okay, it is,
Yeah.
But easy to forget.
No, it's very important to stop and smell the roses.
Yeah.
To take that, literally.
Yeah.
It's
but also a contributor to all the mental health, that everyone's talking about, and a lot of people have suddenly realised, oh yeah, that was me. That was me. This is, now it's out there, and people have identified it, and it's kind of okay to talk about having anxieties or being depressed or whatever it is.
We all do it, man.
Yeah.
And like I said, the reason that I do a cold shower was primarily for that, the depression, mental health. Also, with it's not quite intermittent fasting, it's more like time restricted feeding, where I only eat from midday to 8 p.m.
Oh, okay.
And then the other 16 hours I fast. And I also do like once
That's
a week.
why you sat and looked at the banana bread for the first hour.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
I was okay, fair enough.
That's some control. It's like a dog that doesn't take that bacon just
But I have to say, at 12:01, he was on that.
like a dog on a bone. But also with the fasting, and then I do a day or 2 days a week where I do a 24-hour fast. And the biggest reason for that was for mental health and clarity.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that it is. Everybody's realizing that everybody's struggling with something. Sorry, and it's not because people are talking about it more. Everybody's realizing that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
It's life can be a great thing, but it can also be a motherfucker, right? I mean, you can get a succession of things that just where you feel like, what else is there that's going to go wrong? I've had about 6 months of just shit luck for some reason or another, where a bunch of things just happened to me, which was completely out of my control and not my fault, but they'd happened to me, and I had to, take the consequences of those. But to get through that, is a good thing, and it's a positive thing. But I definitely think that these little things has really helped me to deal with all that. Which is good.
Just
and I can recommend that to anybody. It's hard work to have a fucking cold shower in January, I can tell you that. But it really, really, really does help. And I mean, even just the thought of going into the shower, it's a fucking challenge, and it's a mental victory immediately.
Yeah, I guess, is that part of it then, like the triumph of it,
for me, it's a big thing,
So it's not just like a physiological thing that...
it's both, because the cold, I'm probably going to fuck this up, but it releases a cold shock protein called cytokines inside your body, and it's same with heat shock, right? So when people go into saunas and these sorts of things, your body reacts in a way. And the same with running for a long time, right? If you get to the point where it becomes meditative, right? It's your body is then shutting down all the things that aren't fucking important, right? And it's like almost survival mode, because you get put in extreme heat or extreme cold. You can go do cryotherapy if you want, where they put you in a tank of how cold is it? I think it's -3 or something.
Okay, right.
In your trunks, like for 3 minutes, because you can't do it longer than that. But those 3 minutes feel like an eternity because it's so fucking cold.
I can't even really hack it when
and
there's just a slight chill in the room.
The shock of that, is just. I would recommend everybody try it. Maybe try and start in the summer, and then work your way towards winter. Because in the winter it's not the most pleasant thing, but it's really helped. And also with mental clarity, not having breakfast is a big thing, because you're like they say, the best hunters aren't hungry.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you transform that, you can transform that into anything. If you're up in the morning and you're hungry and you're ready to go, your body's like, let's go, let's do this, rather than having, I've got my sustenance straight away. I can just sort of like be on idle mode for a while.
Yeah.
Whereas if you wake up in the morning and like, I'm kind of hungry. It's been about 12 hours since I had a meal, and I've got another few to go before I can have a meal. Let's get up and let's get things going. Push so you can kind of like forget about the hunger and get the things done that you need to get done. There's no lull after lunch either. If you've had a good breakfast and then you have a lunch, then you're sort of like, go back down to idle for a while. And don't get that with this. So
I think it's interesting to everyone's like different strategies. I'm sort of thankful that it's become this. Talking about depression and anxiety has become this common knowledge. It's a thing that's out there that's clearly well explained. Lots of people are kind of self-identifying as, oh yeah, God, that was me. That's what that feeling was all these years. Right, okay, cool. And you can just start figuring out the puzzle a bit. There's all sorts of ways of doing it. And mine is running. I think I don't do it to stay physically fit. Like that.
It's your meditation.
Yeah, it's my meditation. It helps me kind of consolidation of thought, I think. But
do you listen to music when you run, or do you
no? Fuck no. I listen to podcasts.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Or a book or something, or just podcasts?
No, just podcasts. Yeah, I like the idea of the talking voice. Like I don't listen to loads of music. I know it sounds kind of weird. I listen to some, but I'm not like. When I was 15, I would just put it on all the time. But I listen to a lot of spoken word, Radio 4, podcasts, I like informational stuff. But there's something about like if I can't sleep, which is not very often, but if I can't sleep...
Stick a podcast on.
Yeah, I just put my phone on the pillow with a little podcast twittering away. I'm gone, like that, gone.
Yeah.
It's always been the way. But yeah, a podcast's good, and it's a meditation. You can go off into a world very quickly. But it's definitely for mental health, not physical health primarily. And I find that very quickly if I don't run much, the black clouds start to set in, and you have to go and
you have to. It's a constant thing where you have to, and to bring that back around, to have a hobby, have a fucking something that's positive in your life that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Even if it's 30 minutes a day. An hour a day, whatever it is, that's just gonna push those black clouds back a little bit. I think it's very important.
Yeah, it is. But it's funny how common it is, And I think I don't know if it's just creative music industry people in particular, or whether it's just a freelance thing. I suspect it's a kind of freelance thing about.
Well, to be honest with you, I think it's anybody who's involved in any kind of the arts, if you will.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not uncommon in any other walk of life. I think it's just being a freelancer and having to have the constant slog and the constant grind. You got to go out there and get it, and go out there and get it, rather than having a position. And it's a monthly PAYE, and you've got your gig 5 days a week, blah, 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 go in there. And I mean, there's a different kind of maybe thing that goes on there, because you can be like, well, this is my life now. Yeah. Instead of your friend sitting there G&T like, this is my life. Yeah. And there's a negative side of this is my life now.
Yeah.
And you see a different kind of mentality with people who are in that position. and don't necessarily want to be there. And a lot of anger, I suppose, a lot of jealousy, which, you know, it's not always, but I've found that you know, when I go into a venue and there's a house tech and he's been there for 30 years, he's fucking bitter because he wanted to be on the road with the band, or something. Maybe he wanted to be a hairdresser.
But I think there's also something in the kind of the model of, you know, that thing where there's the thing about you know, do it for the exposure, right? So, you know, there's no money, or there's not much money, or there's less money than you expected for this job, but if you do it, you will then be associated, you know, with this thing which is better than you had before, and there's a benefit to that for you going forward. Essentially, you get a better.
It's another thing on the CV.
Another thing on the CV, right? Fuck that, right? Do you know what? Like, there is some value in that, but not loads. I have to say, not loads. And we went to the State of the Arc Studios, right? With James to do some recording for his album that we did, and the guy who owns that studio, I think it might not be there anymore, but Terry Britton, right? And he wrote What's Love Got to Do With It, which Tina Turner sang, and a bunch of other stuff, but that's like one of his most famous ones. Yeah. His son, at the time we went to it to do some sessions, his son was running it as a more commercial venture. It was the songwriters, you know, like lab, and now it's this more commercial venture. And on the toilet there is a telegram from Quincy Jones which says, you know, something like, "Hey man, I just heard What's Love Got to Do With It, best song I've heard in 10 years, Quincy." And it's just sat on the toilet, right? So I mentioned this to the guy who's running the studio, and I went, "Oh, that's cool." He goes, "Oh yeah." They got to know each other. My dad, the songwriter, and Quincy, you know, had this relationship. Quincy Jones rings this guy up one day and says, "I'm working on Thriller," right? Now, we know, like, Thriller became the biggest selling album of all time, more or less. I'm working on Thriller. You know, obviously you don't know in advance it's going to be the biggest, but he's saying it's going to be massive.
It's going to be a big thing.
It's going to be a whopper, yeah. And I've heard this song of yours, you know, on some tapes that were flying around. We really want to use this song on Thriller. Now, on the face of it, that's great. But then he goes, only thing is, the record company have said, we can't buy you out of it, and we can't give you any royalties. You just have to give us the song for free.
Did he do it?
No, he didn't. And that song like ended up on like a B-side for Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie or something, right? But when I heard that, I was like, fuck. It happens at every level of the music industry. That's the business model of the music industry. That's how that works. You know, and they sort of said, but it will be massive and your name will be on it. You'll be credited as the songwriter, but you just won't get any money for doing it. And then that will be the most huge billboard you can imagine for your work. And that is something we all experience all of the time, like the dangling of the carrot for less return than you are worth. And that's not good for your mental health.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. You know, and having, like we said, the first time that happens to you, when you put yourself into it and you put your all into it, and then all you get is proper shafting at the end of it. It's a hard pill to swallow. But you know, when you go through a few of these divorces, you know, it's, you start to take it on the chin. You're like, that's what it is. Yeah.
I had a nice line. It was a comedian that said it, and they would suffer a similar model in their industry, I guess. You know, you can do this better gig that's better than anything you've done before, but there's not really any money in it. But we know we can pay you in the profile of this gig, you know. And she was talking about trying to support her and her kid. Actually, you know, I think she was a single mum, and being fucked off by that system, if you like, you know, and the fact that you don't just get paid to do the gig. And she's, you know, got frustrated about it, and then came to the realization that you don't have to, you know. And the expression she came up with was, I just decided to plan a better life for myself, plan a better way for myself, you know. And then she sort of left it at that, you know, in this interview, and I was like, I wonder what she means about that. And then, you know, at the time, I just started to build a studio. It was just becoming maybe 50% of my income, and I realised that this gives you leverage for those situations where you'd be involved with a gig with an artist or a band, or might even be a function band or something, where you're being offered less than you can live on, or the bare minimum that you can live on, or some amount that is less than they can afford to pay you.
Yeah,
that's the frustrating
when you feel
thing.
like you're being shafted.
Yeah, if you know the band's getting 500 quid for a gig, and there's 5 of you, and you're getting 100 quid each. That's fine.
Yeah,
I get that, and especially if you like the guys and you like the music. Like, I've been in that situation. Like, I will do that 5 days a week.
100%.
Totally great.
Yeah.
If you know that, you're
in the same boat as everybody.
Everyone's
else.
in the same boat. The artist is sort of saying, I've been in a situation where the artist has gone, we all get equal share, and he'll get his CD sales and his royalties and stuff too. That's his thing.
That's his thing, yeah.
But in terms of the live bit, we'll put the same effort in, we'll get the same out. Same money out. That's fine. And but when there's like tons of money going in, there is, and you're scraping by, that's the hard one to swallow. But you are in a position, probably because you've deliberately given yourself no other option, to push yourself forward into these hard to come by gigs where you can't really afford to not do it. You can just barely afford to do it. And so there's a frustration associated with that.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going, now I'm angry about myself for being in this situation, having to accept, a lower wage than they were paying me the last tour, say, or the gig before or whatever. And there might be a totally legitimate reason for that, and often there is. And if the communication is good most of the time, that's fine. But there is a frustration about that. And at the time, I was like building my studio up, and I was like, do you know what? I want to get this to the point where I don't have to say yes to these things.
Yeah.
And, I guess recently, the last year, I've been able to comfortably move away from things and just go, no.
No, thank
to all intents and purposes, I literally will lose money if I do that now. And I don't feel like my nuts are on the line if I say no, and I won't have any work, because I'll just go to my studio and I make a bit more money than I would have done being on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm equally as happy, and my mental health is intact. I don't have to kind of kick myself for having to take crap money for long days, or so I think that was a nice notion, like plan a better future, plan a better life for yourself. If you're in a situation that's frustrating, you're getting these gigs you can't say no to for money that you should be saying no to. Plan a better way. Figure out what that is.
Yeah,
it helps enormously.
Yeah, and then incorporate the three stages of being. Right, it's the thought, then the word, then the deed. If you think about something enough, you're going to start talking about it. If you talk about it enough, you're going to start doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Be it good and bad.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who get stuck at the talking stage.
Sometimes talking can take a long time.
Yeah.
Till you convince yourself. Yeah. Especially if it's a big leap to take. I think the more you talk about it, it's kind of like talking, some sense into yourself, or maybe encouraging yourself, or it's a little pep talk to yourself. I don't know, whatever it is. People can talk about things for a long time.
That's an interesting.
And as long as they keep talking about it, it means that the thought is still there, and it's still something that's relevant for them or important to them.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting philosophy. When I used to work on Denmark Street, I was very frustrated by that job. And it was 50% of my income probably by the time I left. So I was playing a bit too at that time. It's about 15 years ago. And there was like a real watershed moment, and it was because we were all talking. We were all at the talking stage. We were all going to the pub after work, standing around talking about the things we were going to do. Guess what I'm going to do? Guess what I'm going to do? And you think, fuck me, I've been having this 4 years. I've been saying this, stood here in the same spot in this fucking pub, being. And so at some point it breaks, and what's the finals? The finals, the doing. The doing. The deed. And then so at that point, just gave up everything, drinking, drugs, everything. And I was like, if I can give that time up to doing the deed of like just getting on with this now, I will be spending more time doing that deed than these guys, at least, and that will give me a bit of an edge.
One step ahead.
Although I had that in my mind for ages, I kind of, for a couple of years, I was like, I was the only one who did this. Look at me, kind of getting on with it. Actually, everyone did it. I look back at that group of people, and they're all successful. They all eventually did the deed, and most of them to a much greater degree than I have. It's frightening to think who was in that room at the time, and there's me going, I'm the one who's done it. And, fuck.
Well, I think success is relative to you, and we've all got a part to play, and we've all got a way to be, and one guy's success may be different from what you deem or need or want as success. One guy, for instance, another sound engineer would want to be with the big band playing arenas and tours and things, whereas for me, I measure success in having something that I like doing. It's a stable thing. And, I can look after myself and my family, and, I've got some time to do my things, and for me, that's being successful.
Yeah.
And for a musician, it can be, are you only successful once you reach fame and this or that, or are you successful when you can support yourself and do just that?
Yeah.
Just be a musician and support yourself.
Yeah.
You understand? Not living in the, in a fucking gutter somewhere. But for me, I think that's where, and a lot of people get just bringing it all back to not looking at the future so much.
Yeah.
Yes, have that goal in mind. Yes, that's where you want to be. But be content with what you've got and the journey that you're taking, right? Because the destination only lasts so long. Like you said, you be doing something, and then for 6 months you're happy, and then you're like, oh, there's another thing.
Yeah.
And the goalpost moves. And it's a natural progression. The goalpost is going to move. And sometimes the wind blows you off course, and then you're like, well, the goalpost has shifted a little bit, and there's somewhere that I want to go. It's changed, by your own volition or, by circumstance. You never know. But having the maturity to accept that there's a new goalpost, and then also accept the journey that you're on, because you're in the journey now. And if you reach the goal right now it's 5 seconds ago.
Right.
Then where are you going to go then? Because you slogged it out, and you had a fucking miserable time to get to this very fleeting moment of being right here, right now. But all this time here, either you missed it out because you were just thinking about that, or you had a miserable time and you enjoyed that single moment.
I think you can waste a lot of energy on
life. You can waste your life.
Yeah.
So just do something that you enjoy in the now, and enjoy the process of doing it. Learning, growing, I think is an important thing to do.
Coming to London and spending the first few years here, fighting against London, fighting against the situation,
builds character.
It does, but I also think I was needlessly fighting against it. I think it probably the realization that I came to after doing it for a bit was positive. Was the positive end to that. I wish I'd come to it sooner, or had never experienced it. But it essentially was come to London going, I'm going to do this exactly my way and only my way. And I'm trying to basically swim against the flow of the current of the river. And I only want, I'm only going over there, but I'm swimming against it. I'm wasting all my energy to travel 1 meter. And actually, we just go and stop swimming, go with the flow, let the river sweep you into the places that it takes you. You'll travel further for less energy and get more things.
Yeah, you might actually get to enjoy whatever on the side of the river.
Yeah,
you're not drowning.
Just go with it. Don't fucking fight it all the time. It's exhausting.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think on that we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you, man.
A pleasure.
I enjoyed this.
Yeah,
I really did. It was
fantastic.
Great, and hopefully we can do it again. It'll probably be in the summer sometime.
There's plenty more to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Until next time. Right. Well, there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed that as much as I have. Hopefully we can get Ollie back and we can finish that chat I'll be linking to his social media in the description, where you can get in touch with him, and I'll link to my social media as always in the description. And I've also got a Patreon page, so if you like what you see and want to help out, go to patreon.com/HeySoundGuy. You can help out there. As always, like, share, subscribe, get the word out there. Thank you. Until next time.